You're enjoying Racing World. It's brought to you by Perspective Group. It's your global motorsport podcast show brought to you in conjunction with Race Control Magazine.
Well, it's the middle of April, and that's one thing. 3 Formula One races in the books for the year and 3 NTT INDYCAR Series races in the books for the year, and another edition of Racing World. Welcome back to another edition of Racing World. Sorry that there's been a delay in the last few weeks of the shows. We've been rather busy here, and for New Zealand viewers, very, very close now to confirming 100% that the documentary for Sky Sports screening later this year in New Zealand, Kiwis Born to Fly, will get the go ahead. So we're really, really excited about that, and we have more on that in the coming days for you, hopefully. Now, looking at things, we're going to start out with Formula One, the latest news from there. First of all, Miami, just a few weeks away now. Currently, most of the circuit from recent flooding in Florida is underwater. So that's something that a promoter could never ever think of. And here they were creating this artificial marina last year. Well, now they've got a little living one right in their own backyard. Surely, though, by the time the Grand Prix rolls around in a couple of weeks' time, that'll all be cleared. And that'll be the latest in the Formula One series for this year before the teams return to Europe. And with Europe, traditionally becomes upgrade time, and certainly Mercedes are working on significant upgrades. This year's car is not what they expected it to be. The correlation between what they thought it would do and what it actually does is still miles away from where they'd like to be. And whilst they're currently running very high in the championship, it's not the ideal situation. Lewis is finding it extremely hard. He commented recently of the fact that he sits so far forward towards the front wheels, it makes driving it a lot more difficult for him over previous models that Mercedes have designed. So it was interesting to hear those comments. And it's a significant thing, the fact that he admits that that's meaning that his driving style hasn't really adapted to this model car. And it's something that maybe the naked eye doesn't see, the fact that he's sitting that far forward in the car. Other things that have happened recently, the Carlos Sainz penalty that the FIA were due to hear this week before Miami as a result of the last lap incident in the Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne just a couple of weeks ago, has now been turned down by the FIA. There will not be an appeal hearing. Ferrari have been informed of that. I'm sure there's probably some fairly choice words behind closed doors, but it means that Sainz's penalty stands from Melbourne, and that's dropped him down the points from that Grand Prix. Bit of a shame. I don't necessarily know whether it's just or not, and so do many other drivers. Alonso, who was a bit of a victim of that, also said, you know, Sainz was an innocent victim. So strong words from the FIA, but that's the way it goes. And then, seeing as he's the man of the moment on the Netflix Drive to Survive series, Gunther Steiner is releasing his autobiography/book in the coming weeks. I'm sure that'll be an interesting read, and capitalising off his, shall we call it, fame from the Netflix series. Certainly a guy that's been around and done all sorts of things from his early days of being a mechanic in rallying, and then becoming effectively a team principal in rallying, working with the late Colin McRae amongst other people. And then moving into Formula One, was involved with the Jaguar program, Red Bull as well, when they were, well, before it became Red Bull Jaguar, and then obviously more recently with the Haas team. Moved to the States for a while, lives in South Carolina in the States, and is based there, and did some work with the NASCAR team as well, and helped bring Red Bull into NASCAR at one stage. But Steiner's book's due out. I might actually put that on my must-buy list, because I think it'll be quite an entertaining read. It would depend how it translates, of course, but you can guarantee there'll be some colourful language in there. Okay, moving on to Kiwis now, and Brendan Hartley back on the top step of the podium at Portimao in the recent WEC event. Good to see Toyota back there as well. They kind of went a little bit back with their tails between their teeth after the rounds in North America. But they were determined to get back amongst it, and Hartley looked strong across the entire event. They qualified well and took another race win, and it shows you again the pedigree of Brendan Hartley, pedigree of another great fine Kiwi that we have out there in the world of motorsport. And speaking of fine Kiwis, Hayden Paddon, 5th in the recent European Rally Championship in Italy. Good result for Hayden. He's enjoying his rally. He's saying that this is more enjoyable than the days that he had in WRC. Has not necessarily any aspiration to be back in the WRC now, and very much during the European program, and feels that it's more suited to his needs. Plus, of course, his New Zealand Rally Championship campaign. So very busy guy, but great to see him waving the flag for New Zealand again. Onwards now to the latest NTT INDYCAR Series round, and there's been some fallout in the recent days as a result of some social media comments that have been floating around aimed towards Callum Ilott. I'm not going to get into them because I don't believe that they're worth getting into, and all it does is fuel the fire. But it just shows you the strength of what we'll loosely call keyboard warriors these days. and how they have no comprehension whatsoever about what either a driver or a team or anyone else goes through, and yet it's very easy to sit behind a desk and battle off a few words. Not, as I said, not going to say any more than that, but not the sort of actions that we need to see in the sport, no matter what part of the sport it is. It's not good culture, and it can just condone that whole thing. It's pretty cheap shot, really. Now, Long Beach. Well, before Long Beach happened, I had the chance to catch up with Alexander Rossi in a pre-event press conference, and Alex was very sociable and a very relaxed Alex, actually. I've talked with him before, but always found him quite hard to talk to, and yet this Zoom chat that we had the other day was really good. He really opened up, and he seems very relaxed and very happy at McLaren.
Well, how about David Turner, Racing World? David, go ahead with Alexander Rossi.
Thanks very much, Dave. Alex, I've just got two questions for you. The first one being, with the variety of cars that run at Long Beach, how does it impact on how the track rubbers in for the IndyCar guys?
Yeah, it's a good question. Last year was a weird one. So they put a sealant down, the city did, and the track grip was like insane from lap one of practice one. And so the grip, or the other running of the other cars, didn't really change anything because the grip level started incredibly high anyways. Pole was a new track record, and it was crazy fast all weekend. Usually it's a really beneficial thing because it starts out as a very low grip green surface because it hasn't been used as a racetrack in a year, and having all of the different stuff, especially IMSA on track, really helps bring the evolution. It speeds up the evolution of the track. So I don't know what it's going to be like this year. If that sealant will still have the same effect, or if it's worn off after California got pummeled with rain for seemingly 5 months. I don't know. We'll have to see. But usually it's a good thing in terms of getting the cars up to speed.
And then the second question, looking more towards the month of May, you've come from a team that's invariably run 4 or even 5 cars at the 500. And you mentioned before how McLaren have geared up to take on your car for the whole season with 3 cars. And they go into Indy with the 4th car with TK joining the squad. Do you feel the team's in a good position to be able to cope with the number of cars they're now running?
Yeah, 100%. We have a lot of people, like a significant amount of people. So I don't think that's any concern of anyone. Obviously, numbers aren't everything. You got to make sure that they're the right people in the right positions. But I think the team's done a very good job. We have access to a lot of people from the McLaren F1 side of things in terms of their, TPC program, so the testing of previous cars program, that are very skilled mechanics. So yes, I think Tony's in great hands. I don't foresee it being any issue whatsoever.
Oh, well, have a great weekend. Enjoy some of that Californian sun and get out of the Midwest, and look forward to catching up with you soon.
Copy. Sounds good. Thanks.
Rossi's certainly in a great place, and I would put him as a threat for possibly the Indy 500. We know that he's very brave going around the outside of people and very determined. So it'd be interesting to see the strength of Chevy, the strength of McLaren, and Rossi's all-out guts, if you like, come the Indy 500 in just over a month's time. Other people that we got to talk to before the race at Long Beach was one Kiwi called Marcus Armstrong.
Long Beach this weekend. I've been looking forward to racing here for quite some time. One of the races that was circled on my imaginary calendar as a race that I was really looking forward to, and an iconic race, obviously. I've always wanted to race here. It's like I genuinely remember thinking about racing here when I was in maths class back at school with my laptop, googling visor cam onboards. And now it's cool. I'm heading there to race this weekend, still watching the same onboards as I was when I was a kid. But it's going to be cool. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun experience. And yeah, I just want to hit the ground running, much like we did at St. Pete, just sort of maximize what we have early on and just get into a good rhythm. And I know that the Chip Ganassi racing package is going to be fantastic as always. So it's just up to me to drive the wheels off it.
And then, of course, a pre-race event would not be complete without talking to the 6-time NTT INDYCAR champion, and that's Kiwi Scott Dixon.
Long Beach Race Week, definitely excited for this one. Nice to always get to the West Coast. definitely some ups and down years. I think that we've had as a team there. It's always the place that you want right at the top of the list to try and win at, and luckily we've been in that spot. But as that saying goes, once you win it, the desire to repeat becomes even stronger. So looking forward to getting there this weekend. I think we've had really great cars. The car at St. Pete was much improved from the season before. So it's all out. We're going for a great qualifying, and hopefully we'll be in a position to challenge for the race win this weekend. And I'm sure all 4 Ganassi cars are going to be very strong. So here we go.
And now, speaking of Dixon, the thing that's gone slightly under the radar in New Zealand, which is a bit of a shame really, and it should be higher up there, Scott Dixon inducted into the 2024 US Motorsport Hall of Fame. This is just significant. Black tie event next March in Florida for it, but the nominees come out a year in advance. He's through along with Jimmy Johnson, 2 great legends, both drove for Chip obviously, but Dixon worthy of that significant thing for Scott Dixon to be part of the US Motorsport Hall of Fame. That is just an amazing feat by Dixon, and the records just continue to grow with this guy. More race starts now pretty much than anyone else in IndyCar, and he's just rewriting the record books all the time. So congratulations, Scott Dixon. Onwards to qualifying at Long Beach, and it was a bit of a mixed bag. Armstrong nearly getting in there and then having a small off during the second round of qualifying that set him back a bit. 3 Ganassi cars in there. The big thing, of course, was there was 5 Hondas in the top 6 and the lone Chevy, Pato Award. Did it set the scene for the race? Not really. And then ultimately it was Kyle Kirkwood that took his very first NTT INDYCAR pole position. Kirkwood back at Andretti Autosport after driving for them in the Indy Next Series, formerly known as Indy Lights. A year at Foyt on loan from Andretti's, as it's now become very clear, and now back at Andretti's, and I think that he's in a good place. He seems very happy, and I think that we're going to see much more from Kyle Kirkwood. The race itself, Kirkwood got a great start. The field got away. Elio Castroneves went off in the very early stages of the race, brought out the first yellow. Things went on. Then there was what we're going to call semi-controversial incident between Pato Award and Scott Dixon. Not going to necessarily lay blame on anyone here, but I will lean it slightly towards Pato, not because I'm favouring the Kiwi, but I think it's got to do with racing room and respect, and Dixon clearly had that corner and Pato was a bit ambitious, and he openly admitted because he had another go at someone else only a few laps later and didn't succeed in it and spun himself, that he was at fault at that one. And I think that's a sign of the fact that maybe he knew that things weren't necessarily kosher, shall we say, on the first attempt. But by and by it becomes racing, and then ultimately Dixon was to have an oil pressure issue or a mechanical issue that took him out of the race. And it's actually the first DNF that Scott Dixon has had since Gateway 2021. So a long time between DNFs for the Dixon, and it just shows you again the strength of not only himself but also the strength of the Ganassi racing squad. The rest of the race was kind of, in many ways, I thought was quite processional. There wasn't a lot going on. Kirkwood really owned that race. Grosjean was respectful in being a teammate and also getting Andretti cars onto the podium, which they needed to do after the bad first rounds. Newgarden was in amongst it for a while, as were the other Penske cars. Their tyre strategy is significantly different to everyone else, and they ran the harder compound tyre to start with, which put them kind of tyre-wise out of phase with everyone. And it wasn't until the last part of the race that we saw that kind of come into play and not be quite so successful for them. The big thing, however, with Dixon is it did drop him down in the championship points order. So if we look at that now, Ericsson is now leading the championship. Dixon has dropped to 6th. McLaughlin is in 10th. Marcus Armstrong's in 17th. But what you've got to remember there is that he didn't do and won't do the ovals. So he didn't do Texas. However, he is still the leading rookie. So it's significant that shows just where Armstrong finishes in races and the fact that he's picking up points over his fellow rookie contenders. So Marcus doing a great job, and it's giving some depth to Ganassi that maybe we didn't see last year with Jimmy Johnson, where the 4 cars are quite strong. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how Sato rolls off at the Indy test, which is happening later this week, which we'll have a special report on as well. 2 days of testing on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway gives you a little bit of a form guide as to what's going on. 33 cars turning up to the test, which will be held on Friday and Saturday New Zealand time, and we'll have a show out on Sunday about that. Looking at the rest of the things, I did talk to Michael Andretti after the race as the winning team owner, and I geared it more towards this 500 test.
Question for you, looking towards the 500 and the test this week as well. On the road courses so far, we've seen Honda be very strong. Texas was slight twist towards the Chevy way. Do you think Honda's in a good position for the ovals at this stage?
Yeah, I believe so. I think they're pretty, they're getting pretty equal. I think, because there's only so much you can do with this engine, right? And I think they're getting closer to each other. So, but they're always still trying to find that last little bit. And I know Honda's working very hard still to do it. And, we're told we're going to have some more stuff for Indy. So I'm hoping it'll be what we need to beat the other guys.
And then when you get to Indy for the test, how important is this first test in sort of setting you up for the month of May? It can go awfully bad for you as well, can't it, if you put a car in the wall or something like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't look at it that way. We look at it more, we hope we unload fast, that you always hold your breath, until you get it on the track and you run the first couple runs with the cars. And, we're hoping that all 5 cars will be equal and then we'll be able to have a fun month and not have to worry about, one of the slow cars, because sometimes it's really difficult to get all 5 cars to be equal. So we're hoping, we worked really hard to try to do that. So that's what we're going to be looking for, next week is, hopefully we were able to, do what we want to do and then make the cars equal and hopefully fast.
Well, congratulations today as a team owner. I look forward to seeing the rest of the series and catching up with you in a couple of weeks' time as well.
All right. Thank you.
Certainly a lot going on in a very busy period now. IndyCar back on track again at the Barber Motorsport Park next weekend. Barber's a fantastic track. A lot of the teams have tested there. Armstrong has already tested there. It's a very technical circuit, very fast and flowing around the backside of the circuit. As I've mentioned many times, absolutely amazing motoring museum there, particularly motorbikes. I was blown away when I got to witness that. Some great viewing spots, great sculpture around the track, which gives its character. Could still be, based on what we're seeing in the weather at the moment in the US, could still be quite cold there, so that will be interesting to see how that plays out. May even be wet. And then from there on in, it's the IndyCar Grand Prix at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and then the 107th running of the Indy 500 presented by Gamebridge only a couple of weeks later. So it's a very busy period now for the IndyCar teams, and of course Formula One in Miami, and then back off to Europe. So there's a lot going on in world motorsport, and can't wait to be in amongst it. And as we said, hopefully we'll have some really, really positive news on Kiwis Born to Fly for you, hopefully by the weekend. Until then, however, stay safe out there, and we'll bring you the Indy 500 pre-season test, if you like, or pre-event test in just a couple of days' time. Thanks for watching Racing World.